yourself. Know what it says. Okay.
Updated code of ethics.
It hasn't been updated.
It has not.
It has not. It did not change.
Okay.
Okay. So, for example, what's the rule about taking a gift from a client? Anyone?
You can take a gift if it's like you don't want to, if it aligns with their culture.
That's part of it. Yes.
If it's less than $50,
There's no money involved. It doesn't say that. And I think it's a good idea. And I think probably someone in your agency told you that, but that is not what the Code of Ethics says. What it says, is that I'm supposed to evaluate and look at all of the other options. Close that, please. So what it tells me is that I have to look at the culture. Someone mentioned that the culture is very important. Look at what does that mean to my client. Okay, so I've got to do that. Also, receiving gifts. Okay. And again, Google, don't buy a copy, and you don't have to waste a tree. You can just Google it. Okay. So then, counselors understand the challenges of accepting gifts from clients and recognize that in some cultures, small gifts are tokens of respect and gratitude. Okay. So, I'll share, probably most of you, one of my clients knitted an Afghan for my baby when I was pregnant. I couldn't turn that down. That was not, she was a Hispanic older woman. But I couldn't. She took her time and she saw me the entire time of my pregnancy. I couldn't. That would have been hurtful to her. That wasn't okay. So when determining whether or not to accept a gift from a client, counselors take into account the therapeutic relationship. I've been seeing this woman weekly, almost through my entire pregnancy. The monetary value of the gift, it did cost her time and money. I do get that. The counselor's motivation for wanting to accept or decline the gift. So all of those things matter. Okay. It does take into consideration that you have some common sense. Okay. So you know what? If someone offers you a new car, you can't take that. I mean, that doesn't spell that out, but surely you have enough sense to know that that's not okay, right?
right?
Unless it's like a Lexus or a Range Rover, then maybe. Depending on what kind of car it is and how bad
Right.
my place, But seriously,
Yes, no.
I'm just saying. But so when it comes to that, that's what it says. And there's a question on the test. It talks about, the Code of Ethics does not cover everything. It's not supposed to. It's a guideline of things that we think that you should know. Okay. There are legal issues that the Code of Ethics doesn't cover. So legally, I shouldn't be sleeping with a 12-year-old. The Code of Ethics doesn't spell that out, does it?
Right.
But surely I have enough sense. I've got a master's degree and a license. I know better. So there's always going to be legal considerations and ethical considerations. But the Code of Ethics and the law are what's going to be covered under that. Again, read it yourself. Please just read it. Okay. Counselor fees, your agency policies, let's see here, your use and limits of social media. Where does that come from? Code of Ethics. Code of Ethics. Okay. Your electronic communication. Can I Facebook my clients and be friends?
No.
Not the best choice, right? I need to have professional boundaries. I need to have clear-cut boundaries. Again, so Code of Ethics, Code of Ethics. Review your client records, provide information to third parties. Okay. Client calls me tomorrow and he says he wants his records. So I just give them to him?
No.
What do I do?
He has to have a release.
And then they're his records, so he can sign a release and I just give them to him?
No, I wouldn't.
Well, I would think so. They're his records.
Isn't there something about them records? Those records might be detrimental or something?
Oh.
Yeah. Something about if I think he's going to harm me or harm himself or something. So Code of Ethics, Code of Ethics, Code of Ethics. Then awareness and practice of self-care. And this impresses me the most. I've yet to see a question about this. And in the profession, we talk about how important it is. But this is the first time I've seen a question that addresses the importance of taking care of ourselves. I haven't seen it on the test yet. I really just trust that it'll be there. But I hope all professions at some point really talk about the importance of the code of ethics. I mean, the importance of self-care. Because we don't. We know we preach it, but we know we don't do it. Okay. So the second part we're going to talk about today is intake assessment and diagnosis. So how to conduct a biopsychosocial, what an MSE is, looking at diagnosing, differential diagnosing, the level of care needed, screening clients for appropriate services, assess for trauma, pre-test, post-test, which is a little bit of research in there. Okay, so that's what that area looks like. So again, area 3, the area of clinical focus. So those are many of your DSM questions, aging and geriatric concerns, behavioral problems, bullying, caregiver concerns, grief and loss, etc. Okay, so those are a lot of your DSM, differential diagnosis, as well as treatment. That's your area of clinical focus. Okay, so then I have my racial issues, racial diversity, understanding that, eating disorders, all that stuff falls under that. Okay.
Pam,
Yes.
I just want to ensure that the most up-to-date code of ethics is 2014.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I use.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's been a while too. That might be changed because that's been a few years.
I've looked and I don't see anything newer.
Not at least for this test, right? But yeah, this is the newest one that we have.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what we're following right now is the 2014 Code of Ethics. Okay. And I for most of you, I've told you, and if not, I will tell you that for most of the things in life, you will just Google. You don't care about the therapist. If you need to know the differential diagnosis for schizophrenia when you're sitting in your office, you'll just Google it. Okay. The one thing I do think is truly important for all of us to understand is our own code of ethics. So whether it's social worker or LPC or my drug counselors, knowing what your code of ethics means, and especially if you're the only you in a profession, you're the only LPC. If you're in a prison or a school and a hospital, or if you have people who don't hold the same code of ethics you do, you've got to know where you stand. Because if it hits the fan, it's your license that's going to be lost. If you're in an interdisciplinary team and you sign off on whatever the team came up with, you are vicariously liable. Okay, and you work too hard to get this license for anyone to risk that. And in all fairness, the first thing you'll get like a sanction, a violation, things like that. But those are public record. So if I decide that I want to come see you and you're in private practice, I can look back and I can see if you've ever been sanctioned. So hold your code of ethics. And again, if you're in a group with other LPCs, it's so easy, right? Because we're all on the same page. But in the real world, if you're working with people who have different professions, it is many times a lot more difficult than we had managed. I did point out today to someone that, so I maybe should have been a counselor because, I could sleep with one of my clients and after only 5 years if I was a counselor. So the social work code of ethics says I can't ever, but maybe I should pick up that LPC just in case I find a hot client. So, but I am single and I'm looking, but not with my clients. So again, knowing those code of ethics that's the one thing I suggest in real life that you really, really know. Okay. Again, all those things, those are my psychiatric disorders. Okay. So treatment planning, again, nothing different, nothing that you don't know already of how to establish a treatment plan, your follow-up and your discharge. Engaging clients in progress toward treatment goal. Those are again things. Treatment goals have to be measurable. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Measurable. Very, very important. Okay. Provide distance counseling or telehealth. Now, I haven't seen a lot of questions on this previously. I've seen one or two on this. I've seen a couple of questions regarding like faxing things over and things like that, making sure that you have a secure database that you use or a secure server. So I do think we might have more questions on that area coming up in the future, and as we should. That's kind of where the occupation is going, the field is going, and that's really important. Okay, so group dynamics, leadership dynamics, again, groups, Corey and y'all, all those things haven't changed, same things, just different ways of looking at it. Okay, and then your core counseling attributes, how you should be as a person. Genuineness, congruence. If I say genuineness, congruence, and non-judgmental attitude, positive regard, what name does that ring? What name would that go to if I saw on the test? What theorists love those words? If I muted you, just click your button to unmute. Come on. Genuineness.
Rogers.
Yeah, she gets my bell. Bingo. And that's what you want to do, is learn to recognize the terminology that goes with that theorist. Because it might not say Carl Rogers, it might just say those theorists. So you're going to have to answer your question based knowing that that's his belief. And Carl Rogers, he followed Freud, and what he said was that these are not clients. I mean, these are not patients, they're clients. Okay, so terms like that. And then, of course, your KCRAP common area cores, same thing. Those are the same things that are on the other tests. So as you see, I'm sorry, it has not changed. The way we look at it's changed. I do think the scoring will be lower in the beginning, just because I think that's how it works. I can't promise you that, but I would take a really good bet on that. A year from now, I think the scoring will increase. But you all know your scoring is set by your state, so depending on where you live. My southern states, your scores are a lot lower than my higher states. Fact. My South Carolina, my Louisiana, my Bible Belt states, I'm looking at like an 85. My other states, the more north I get, I'm looking at my 90, 92. And again, my out west, California, I'm looking at even higher, 97, 98, those things. Again, depends on the test you get. So there's a term called parallel testing or test retest, which determines the validity of the test that you take. And that same test is going to measure everything. So you may wonder, what score I need to take. It depends on the test. So that's just a fact. And because we have parallel forms, that means you can take the same test. You take the same test 12 times. Please don't, but never get the same questions, because they measure the same thing. That is internal validity. Okay, so the inside of the test, the questions match the content of what we think you should learn. That is internal validity. Questions. External validity is then being able to generalize that test. So the assumption is that I gave this same test to everyone who, is graduated from a KCREP school, who has studied, will get the same score. That's externalized validity. And you know that validity is what matters the most. My test has to be valid. It can definitely be replicated, but if it's not valid, that replication then doesn't really matter. So those are just some research terms I'm going to throw in there, just so you kind of realize it's really, really not as hard as your teacher made it seem. Okay. Questions in general, guys? Just ask me.
No.
Thanks for that overview.
Oh, not a problem. Not a problem. Okay. So go ahead. Was there a question there?
I have a question, Dr. Turner. That Hellwig study guide. Did you say that you could send that to us? Is that
Did I not? Of course I can.
Okay.
Do you use Pocket Prep?
I've got it. I haven't started using it yet.
So this Pocket Prep is written by Hellwig, and
Okay.
in there it'll tell you like what page to go to.
Okay.
Okay, so that is written by Helwig, and I actually really, really like him. I think the reading is a lot easier than Rosenthal. Let me just download it and share it. Let's get a shareable link. And anything that I use in session, anything that you see, anything, just remind me to sew yours. I do not mind at all. I don't think that, I think with many of my students, it's not the lack of material. And in general, if you're reading material, you should be getting the same questions and the same answers. You shouldn't find different answers to the same questions. Content is content. That should not change. Whether you're reading it from me or whoever, Rosenthal or any of those, it should not change. And if you find there's a discrepancy in what you're reading, it's in the chat box. So when you're done, if you haven't opened your chat box, it's right there to the right. When you're done, not only will that be there, then also the video of this recording. And if you go back up, you'll see the recordings from prior sessions. And then usually about 2 weeks from now, they're on YouTube. Okay. So then, let's use Helwig let's use Helwig. One of the reasons I like about him is he really kind of goes over things. And I think it's just a really nice, simple way to look at it. I just like the names, and, there are 1,000 names on this test. I told someone today, this is my favorite theorist. It's William Perry. And I like William Perry because he taught at Stanford University, and he looked at college students and how they learn. And the first year when they're freshmen, he came up with dualism. And they think that the professor is the best thing ever. And can I tell you how great it is to teach 18-year-olds? They just think everything I say is amazing. I can say, oh, the sky is blue. Oh my gosh, really, Professor Turner? So that does well for my ego. I like William Perry's. However, what he says is they do grow up, that the second year is, they learn some multiplicity to make their own choices. And the goal, of course, is to be relativism. And then they committed to that where you make your own thinking choices. But when they're so young, they're just like little sponges. You guys remember when you started college, you thought that, oh, that teacher is so smart. And you got to know her and you're like, oh, really?
I think someone's accidentally taking pictures of their house.
I thought I was seeing things.
So you might not want to put your house on social media. I'm just going to say that. I think I can delete them. I'm sorry if you want to read from here, forward, copy. I don't think I can. I think I can do them at the end. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put your address on there too, and just in case, I have like 2,000 views on my YouTube channel, so I'm just going to say you might not. Okay. So we're going to start kind of with my appraisals, which totally, is part of that. And then we'll go back and we'll pick up some of our theorists. But in general, let's look at some of these questions. Okay. So many times people get appraisals and my research questions kind of confused. I don't think there's always a clear one. Okay. So which of the following statement about negatively skewed distributions is accurate? So then let me just talk to you, and if you know the answer. So what we know on a standard bell curve that, let me go back to this. So first of all, if you haven't had me before, I always recommend that when you go in, this is what you need to write down on that lovely sheet of paper. You need to memorize it and learn it. So that's going to answer many, many, many of those questions. Is there anyone in the group who's taken the test more than once who'd want to talk about it or share? So the test, it doesn't want you, this is not a math test. If this were a math test, it'd give you a calculator and a pen and a paper. This is not what they're looking for. It's, do you know the Z-score as opposed to the T-score? Can you tell me if a person scored this much on their Z-score, what would they score on their T-test? So I do recommend that you memorize this and write it down. It's really simple. The first standard deviation, of course, is always 68%. The second one is 95. And the third standard deviation is what?
99.
Thank you very much. Okay, so 99.75, but most of the answer will either be 99 or that 99.75. That's the assumption that the mean, median, and mode all line up. My median is that strip of grass in the middle of the highway. That's the number that's right in the middle. My mode is a number that appears more than once. And my mean, of course, is you add those up, and I'm going to get my average. Okay, so then this is a standard deviation sign. Again, they don't ask you to figure it out. They really don't. All they want to know is, do you know? First standard deviation is 68. Second is 95. Third one is 99.75. Your percentages, it starts at 50 at the mean, median, mode and goes up and down. Your Z-score, the mean of a Z-score is 0. The mean of a T-score is 50. Okay? And again, just facts. Not making you learn anything or just figure it out. Just facts. The standard deviation of a Z-score, which is the numerical curve, is a -3 or a +3. Okay?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Okay, looking at the curve, you said the first, I don't see it.
You got it. Gotcha.
Okay, you said the first set or the middle set where it says 34.13%, 34.13%, that's 68%?
It is. So what I'm looking at is this is the mean, median, mode. This is a normal distribution. If there were 100 people in the world, this is where they would fall. So then 38 and 38 is 68%. So yes, it's like 68 point blah, blah, blah. Most of the time on the test, they're not looking for that. They're just wanting to know, do you know 68%? So
where are you getting the 95 and the 99?
I'm adding 13, 34, 34, 13.
Gotcha.
That's where that's coming from. That's my 95. Okay. And then I'm going to add 2.14 in here. So that's 99.75. And if you remember anything about your outliers, so you see that 0.13%, those are my outliers. Okay. So then it's 100 people in the world, 99.75 would line up here on a normal bell curve, normal standard deviation. Okay?
Yes.
So then the question, though, asked me if it wasn't normal. The question asked me, which of the following statement about a negatively skewed distribution is accurate? So if I have a negative skew, what that means is that my median, median, mode, and my mode, median, and mean are not lined up. So then, what is the highest point if they don't line up? So if they don't line up, my highest point is going to be the mode, because the mode is the number that appears more than once. Okay, so if the mean, median, and mode do not line up, then the assumption is that the mode, because that's the number that appears more than once, is going to be the highest point. So then I'm going to plot my mean either left or right of my mode, depending on what it's asking me. So this is the same information on a number line. Okay, so then if my mode is the highest point and my mean is lower than my mode, that's my average, then it's a left skew. On the number line, what numbers are left? If this is 0, what numbers are left?
Negative.
Exactly. So then a left skew is a
Negative number.
negative skew. Got it. Okay. However, other way, my mode, again, my highest point, if they don't line up, my mode is always going to be the highest point because that's the one that appears more than once. So then my mean, if my mean is to the right of my mode, that's my positive. They're going up. Okay. So for all of those research teachers who made you feel stupid, it really isn't that. So just understand mode is always the highest point because it appears, and then left or right based on that the number line. Okay? If they all line up, it's a standard normal bell curve and we're good. But if they don't line up, that's what it looks like.
Pam, I think I've heard this multiple times, and quite honestly, I think this is the first time that it's really clicked for me. I don't know if it's using the that the way that you just explained it was so helpful.
I'm glad. I am.
Yeah.
I hated research and I hate research teachers now because the most of them are not social workers. Even if you take the behavior science people, they come in with a very or counselors, they come with a very different viewpoint than most of us come in. Most people in this field, as Holland would say, we're very social. We're okay if black and white. I'm sorry, if the numbers, if things aren't black and white, we're okay with gray. And most of the researchers are very black and white. So I try to explain it with a little gray. That it's really not as hard as they were so mean to us. They were. So then let's look at the question. So which of the following statements about a negatively skewed distribution is accurate? Okay.
That the mean and mode are equal. The mean is lower than the median mode. The mean. C.
Exactly. Why?
Because the mode is the highest point.
And why is the mode the highest point?
Because it's the most seen or most used number.
You got it. Bingo. That's it. That's it. Okay. So look at this one. A class of 9 students completed a midterm exam. The most appropriate measure of the variability of these scores is probably. Variability just means difference. So what I'm looking for is what is the best measure to look at the difference of these people. There's 9 students. Okay. So the central tendency is what?
Wow, I haven't seen this in the past.
The central tendency is the mean, median, and mode. Line toward the middle. That's all that means. So on that, remember that back to that, there's our distribution. Everything's lined up in the middle. That's central tendency. Things tend to go toward the center. That's all that means. Oops, that's my question. Okay. So then, how do I figure out my range?
Is it the largest number and the smallest number? The difference between the largest and the smallest number?
Exactly. You take the largest number, you subtract the smallest number, and you get the range. If I need an inclusive range, what do I do?
Add one.
Yes. Yeah. Is that hard?
No.
Really? That's yes. Okay. So that's my range. My standard deviation, we talked about, that's a percentage, right? First standard deviation is?
What was the question?
The standard deviation. We just talked about that. My first standard deviation would be
68%.
Second one would be
95.
Third one is
99.75.
You got it. You got it. Okay. So I'm not really sure standard deviation makes any sense. And variance, again, just means difference. So the most appropriate measure of variability in these scores, based on now what you know, what would that answer be?
D.
My central tendency, they're all going toward the middle. Would you say D or B? Repeat.
I said B.
B. Is this it? That's my range. That's my range. There are 9 students. Okay. So to find out the range of who did well, I'm going to take whatever their scores were, the highest score from the lowest score, to come up with that. Okay. So 103, let's look at this one. The important psychometric property of tests and inventories is reliability. A good definition of reliability is what? Okay. So remember, don't you do that. It's not that hard. Reliability just means that if I use the same test over and over again, I'll get the same answer. Okay.
Consistency.
Exactly. Okay. The term psychometric, people who do psychometrics are people who just test. Okay. So if I'm using the testing properties of the inventory. Inventories are used in what field of counseling?
Career.
Yes, career. If you see inventories, that's a ding, ding, ding career term. Exactly. Okay. And then tests, of course, could be achievement, IQ, a lot of those things could be IQ. However, a good definition of reliability is consistency. Does it happen over and over again? Okay. So we just talked about the inclusive range. How do I get that?
Adding 1.
Exactly. Highest from the lowest, add 1. My standard deviation, those percentages are
68.
Okay. Second one is
95.
Third one is
99.
Thank you very much. Okay. So now my correlation coefficient, what is that? So correlation, relationship, coefficient, number. I'm looking at the relationship between the numbers. A perfect correlation is a +1 or a -1. It's either a negative correlation or a positive correlation. 0 is no correlation at all. Okay. So I'm looking for a perfect correlation between two. It can be between two tests, between two questions on a test. I'm looking for it to see how well they match. You might see a question like, so a person came out with a new IQ test and they're seeing if it measures up to the Wechsler test. So I'm looking for the correlation, the relationship, and the number. So if they don't match at all, it's a negative correlation, which is fine. That's a -1. Perfect correlation of not matching. Perfect correlation of matching is a +1. Okay? So what is the lowest number I will take to prove correlation?
Is it +3?
So the highest I'll take is +1. +1 and +1 or 0, 1, a +1 or -1 is the highest. 0 is none. So now I'm looking at my points. So 0.70 is the lowest acceptable range for a correlation coefficient. The lowest acceptable. So if it's a 0.60, am I taking it?
No. Yes.
No, 0.60 is too low. So the answer might be this correlation is not acceptable. What if it's a -0.80?
Yes.
Exactly. It's a negative correlation, but it's still a correlation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So,
negative. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it's still correlation. Whether it's negative or positive, it's still a correlation. And that's all that means to me. Standard deviation, a correlation coefficient is the number that matches that. That's all. Okay. Okay, so let's look at number 106. In a normal distribution, what percentage of scores fall within the range of 0.2 to -2 standard deviations from the mean? First standard deviation is 68. The second one is, and I said 95, but we do know it's 95 point blah, 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 blah. Okay, exactly. So on the test, you might see 95, 95.7, 96. That is the answer. That is my second standard deviation. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, I'm not gonna freak you out
So
here.
that answer was
That answer was A.
A. Yeah,
A. Okay.
I had to make sure.
I'm gonna skip number 107. I'll come back to that on my Z and C scores. I'm not trying to freak you out here. Okay. Number 110. An aptitude test is an indication of what?
C.
See,
Mhm.
Okay.
Interest versus
And
test.
we'll give an example of an aptitude test. You are correct. Give me an example.
The
SAT.
ASVAB. It
ASVAB.
measures how much I know with those math and science things, and then knowing what I know, how well could I learn those things for the military? Okay.
For the ACT.
The ACT is not an aptitude test. The ACT is what? Anybody?
I
Intelligence.
learned today it is, it says,
It is a what?
wait, I can't remember. I just went over that with
Did you just say you learned today?
I learned today.
So it's an achievement test to see how much you've
Yeah.
learned.
Yeah.
It's also a predictive
Yeah.
test.
Yeah.
Why colleges make you take it, because it's supposed to predict how well you'll do in high school. So yes, it's an achievement test, but it's also a predictive test. Okay. So the NCE, the test you're taking, that's what kind of test is that?
A hard test.
This is true, but it's
Prediction.
doable.
So this would be, would it be in the,
Go ahead, come on.
they're testing how much we know, right?
Yeah, so that is a
Achievement.
perfect. But is it a predictability test? Does it tell me how well you'll be as a counselor?
No.
No, not at all. You all know people who have this LPC and suck as counselors. Okay, so it is
Okay.
not predictive. Okay, so so the other classes would be achievement as well as predictive, but this has nothing to do with it. Has to do with how well you study and how well you learn the information. That's all. Okay. So my other test would then be my WAIS, my WISC, and my WIPSI. What are those?
WAIS is WEISS.
AIS.
AIS.
Version of
WAIS.
WIPSI a intelligence test?
And so is my WAIS, and so is my WISC. So what's the difference?
One is for the WIPSI is for children, I think.
My WIPSI is for my preschoolers. They
Right.
pee in their pants, 3 to 5.
Love it.
They still pee in their pants. That's my WIPSI.
Okay.
3 to 5. Okay. Those are what we give to parents who think their children maybe don't need to go to kindergarten or just skip first grade or get in first grade early. That's the most often where we'll see it. So that's my WIPSI, 3 to 5. They pee.
Okay.
My WISC. What's that one? That is my intelligence test for who?
elementary age.
Yeah.
They are from
I don't
6 to 16.
Yeah.
It's for children 6 to 16. Okay, that is measuring their IQ, which is their intelligence. That is my WISC. Those are David Wessler and his test. What is a standard score on my WISC?
100.
100. With my standard deviation, I'll take between 91 and 109. But my standard score is 100. That is on all of them. My WISC, my WIPSI, or my WAIS. So my WAIS is for who? Got my A in there.
Adults.
Yeah, yes, that's my adults. Okay. So again, what I'm looking for is my intelligence test by David Wexler. So just in general, when it looks at an IQ score, and most often what I've seen is the question of whether or not when we look at mental retardation and those scores. Okay. So like I said before, a standard IQ is, it's usually 100. So what we see is between 90 and 110. That's what we're looking for. Okay. Below 70 is cognitively impaired. So most often it talks about being mildly mentally retarded, moderately mentally retarded, and severely and profoundly mentally retarded. So you might see a question regarding, a plan or what you should do with a kid whose score is 70. What the testers want you to know is that child should not be on a college track. We're looking at, adaptability skills and making sure that he learns, knowledge enough to get back and forth to school and things like that. Okay, so you might see that on the desk. Below 120 to 131, of course, those are my gifted kids in high school. And then 130 is extremely gifted. That is the ones that are 143 is Mensa material. Those are those really, really smart people that, just are so amazingly smart. So that's a standard IQ. So what matters the most is knowing the 100, knowing 143 or above, and knowing what happens when I'm below 70. Okay. So in general, we always say IQ doesn't change. Question?
That's what I heard.
Okay. However, this little guy named David Cottrell came up with this sentence, this thought that perhaps it does change. Okay. Yeah, he did. So what he said was that our crystallized intelligence, the stuff that we know, doesn't really change. And we've known that for quite a while, right? However, he suggested that as I get older, maybe my IQ goes down. My ability to learn new things goes down. I want to open. Come on, open for me. Come on, open. Not opening. Okay. Not opening. So if you can see it, okay. So what we've always known is your IQ really doesn't change. We can take it when you're 3 or take it when you're 103, and in general, it doesn't change. So it's going to go up in general, as you get older, your knowledge, but that standard number doesn't change. So that is your crystallized intelligence. Those are things that you know. Okay. Will you always know 2 + 2 = 4?
Always.
Yeah. Okay, so those are things that you know. Like we learn how to ride a bike, you never forget, blah, 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 that stuff. However, what he then suggested is that we have fluid intelligence. What's that?
It decreases over time.
Repeat?
Like, even though we remember, but things decrease over time. There are some things that we will forget.
Oh, no, he didn't say
No.
that. That is true, though. That is true. But what he said is as I get older, it's like harder to learn new things.
Yeah, it was harder to learn.
So exactly. So, like my crystallized, it's facts-based, it increases with age. But my fluid intelligence makes you understand why my like new iPhone is hard to like understand. Or we'll have to call my kid to help me understand how to hook up my printer. Because as I get older, things become more difficult for me to understand. It takes longer. My capacity to reason, my ability to learn new things all go down. If it makes you feel any better, it happens about the age of 30. So you peak at 30, and after that, you begin to go down. Does that help? So if you made it to this point, you're okay. But that's fluid and crystallized intelligence, and that is David Cottrell. That's his name. So you might see on that test. So my fluid, again, I kind of think that changes. So again, when you were young and you're excited, you got this new piece of electronic equipment, you're like, oh, wow, I'm so excited. As we get older, we get a new piece of electronic equipment. We're like, oh, Lord, somebody please help me set this up. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what that says. I know it's just me, but. Okay, let's look at number 105. Which of the following is representative of a non-standardized assessment?
Intelligence.
So a standardized assessment is the NCE. It is almost any test. So
B, checklist and rating scale.
and why is that not standardized?
It's subjective.
It is. It certainly is. So very good. Okay. Look at 109. Split half reliability and the use of the Spearmint-Brown prophecy is associated with which type of reliability? We did that one already?
No, we haven't.
Okay. Split half reliability just means if I took all the evens and you want to mute ourselves.
Oh, can
Let me mute you. Who's that? Okay. So what split half reliability means is that if I do the first half and you do the second half, then we should get the same score. You do all the odds, I do the evens, we should get the same score. That's split half reliability.
So the answer will be B, equivalence,
So what makes it equivalent?
because we split it in half.
Okay. So why is it not internal consistency?
Oh,
Because I don't know what that is.
So internal consistency, again, is the inside of the test.
I just messed up.
that's right. You said that.
Inside of the test, okay? So
Internal
internal is inside, external is outside. So external is can it be generalized? If everyone takes it, will I get the same score? So it's internal consistency because those are the numbers. So a question you might see when it comes to, again, reliability and validity is one of the things that we do know is there's not a test that does not have, that's culturally bias free. All of our tests have some written in cultural bias. They're based on, especially our older tests, are based on upper middle class white men in general. So as we are women or minorities, we do know that there's just not a test that is culturally free. So the issue of when we see the most bias has to do with the internal consistency, which is the questions. Okay, so if you see that question of where the issue of, the lack of internal consistency, those are where the questions are. Okay. I got lots of background, so I'm going to do some muting. If you just want to talk, feel free to reopen yourself, but sometimes we have people in our background that...
I was
Go ahead.
I was on Pocket Prep, and I remember there being a question about the Spearmint-Brown formula, in that they asked they asked about using this formula when you want to do the opposite of splitting a test. So if a test was split and you want to proceed as if it wasn't split, then you would use this formula. I thought that was how I read it.
You might, but it wouldn't matter.
Okay.
You still should get the same answer, whether it's split or not. Does that make sense? Yes? No? So the goal is, I'm looking for internal consistency. So what I want to know is do these questions measure what they're supposed to measure? So split half is a way of measuring it. Okay. However, it's only one way of measuring it.
Okay.
So I could still use the Spearmint to then determine whether or not these questions match what I want them to ask.
Okay.
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 The Spearmint is a paramedic test. Let's look at 111. Does everyone know what the word ipsative means?
Yes.
Please share.
It's when your measurement is, you're measuring against yourself.
You got it. That's my ipsative score. Okay. So I work out in the gym. All I'm trying to do is improve my score from last time, or how much I lifted from last time. That's what ipsative means. Okay. So then 111.
Is it criterion referenced?
Because?
It's a licensure score, and it's measuring how much of the criteria you know.
You got it. You got it. That's exactly. So that's what it's based on what you know. And there's a set criteria. Is this test criterion based? NCE?
Yes.
Exactly. There's some things that you're supposed to know. They give you the list. They give you the domains. That's criterion based. Perfect. So, convergent validation and discrimination validation are concepts associated with what type of validity? Be brave. Okay, so go ahead.
I would say C.
Why?
Well, because I'm just looking, and I don't know any of these terms.
Okay.
If I'm looking at convergent and discriminate, I don't think that's content based. I don't think it's going at the same time to be concurrent. And I don't think they're trying to predict anything. I think that they are constructing something.
So what is construct? And the term, so you'll see like constructivism and construct theory. In general, what does that term mean?
To make, or what society goes along.
Yeah. Bingo, bingo. You get my bell. You got it. Yes. So really, as a construct is like gender, or so things that we in society have come up with. So if we use that term, whether it's here or anyplace else, that's what kind of construct validity looks like. So based on what I've come up with or what I deem to be valid, this is where it would come from. So convergent validation really is where then my answers come together. When is that the Robert Frost poem, two roads converge together, and I took the road less traveled. They come together. And discriminant is the opposite then, right? If they come together and the other one comes apart. Okay. So the answer to that one is construct. It is construct validity. Okay, good job. Okay. So then, 113. If a test has a mean of 50 and a standard deviation of 10, this means, and I've said to you before, if you need a calculator, you're not figuring it out right. Okay, because there should be no calculator involved.
Okay, so 50 is the average. And standard deviation of 10. We know.
The average is 50. The standard deviation is 10. Okay, so how would I figure that out?
So would the answer be B?
Because how would you figure it out? Tell me how.
Because I'm thinking plus 10 minus 10.
Okay.
And if mean is 50.
So what I'm trying to go, I'm going to go on my 68, 96, 68, 95, 96, and 97, 99. So if my mean is in the middle, I know that my first standard deviation would be what? 68% of that. Okay, so that would be 50, 68% of 50. I'm not trying to figure it out the hard way, but I do know that if my standard deviation is 10, then 2 standard deviations below would be 20, and 2 standard deviations above would be 70.
So the answer is
A.
A.
Okay, so it's telling me my standard deviation is 10. Okay, so all I'm going to do is take 2 standard deviations above and 2 below to get that 96. None of the other ones make sense. Because it's 2 standard deviations, right? And it's giving me the formula. It's not, so I know my 68 and all that's my percentage. That's how I know my percentages. But to figure it out, my mean is in the middle. So one standard deviation, if it's 10, one would be 60. One above would be 60, one below would be 40. But 50% is not that standard deviation. That would be 68%.
Gotcha.
So 2 standard deviations. Again, I'm adding 10 and 10. So the only one that makes any sense is A.
It's A.
Does that confuse you all? So I have to know the percentages of 68 and 96 on this one. Sometimes it's 95 and 97. So knowing my mean is in the middle, and then I'm going to add and plus my standard deviations, which it gives me is 10. It's quiet. Is everybody confused?
Well, I guess if I knew the bell curve, that would make more sense. So,
and even if you didn't know the bell curve, though, you know the 68, 90, 68, 95, and 99.
okay.
Okay. And I know my standard deviation is that little sign. So in order, what I have to do is figure out which one of those makes the most sense. And the only one of those that even means anything on my standard deviation is A. The other numbers are what? 68?
Oh, yeah.
And 99. So the only one that even comes close to a number I'm looking for is A.
It's A.
And again, it might say 95 point something or, give you that. But my bell curve is 68, 95.75, but 96, or then 99. Okay. So again, they're not trying to make you do math. So if you're trying to get out a pencil and paper and trying to figure this out, then you're missing something. Okay.
So as long as we have those memorized, we would be able to rule out B, C, and D.
You would.
Because...
And you would know that those aren't standard deviations, right?
Right.
Because they're 68, 99. I say 95, but this test says 96, but close enough. So if you know that, then knowing what that means, you would know that, A has to be the answer. And even if I didn't know my standard deviation, so this said 2, if I'm looking at which one makes sense, 2 standard deviations of 50, 2 would be 50, 70, and 2 below would be 30. And then that would be 1, 2, 3 standard deviations, and that would give me my A. Okay. That it doesn't get much harder. That's it. Okay. So I'm telling you, don't freak out. Okay. Let's look at 114. Consider a normal curve represents 1,000 on an exam. One individual score is equivalent to -1 standard deviation. Given that information, which of the following statements is not true? So, if I know that the normal bell curve, it represents 1,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the individual score is equivalent to a 1. That's the first standard deviation. So the equivalent of this is one you would go back and you could look at your diagram if you'd drawn it. The score is equivalent to a t-score of 40. So if you went back to here, you could look and see. Okay. So this is given it's 1,000, right? So this is given at 100. So what they did was add a 0 to it. So if I'm saying that my normal distribution is 1,000, then my t-score, what was the question? My t-score would be, then the score of equivalent to, the score is equivalent to a t-score of 40. Let's go back. So then, if this is 100, now it's 1,000, my t-score oops, don't go there. Okay. So then one individual score is equivalent to minus 1 standard deviation. Okay. So then this is my 1,000, or I'm adding a 0 to it. So 1 standard deviation over is what it said, -1. So I'm looking for my equivalent to my t-score. That would be
40.
Okay. That's all that means. So then that one is true.
Okay, so that's not the correct answer.
That one's okay. So this score is at 16% of all 1,000 t-scores. It's 16%. Let's go back. Or is it 16%?
Okay, so that wouldn't be the correct answer.
So if it is though. So because that's 15, so that'd be 16. And I've already said it's 1 standard deviation over. So it would be 16 right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's true. Okay. The score is equivalent to a z-score of a -1. Z-score, same.
Okay, so that
-1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 50% of the sample of takers has a score higher than this individual. 50% of the sample taken has a test score higher. Go back. Looking at my percentages. Okay. So these are my percentiles when I'm looking at my percentages, my cumulative percentages. So it's 50.
Mm-hmm.
The test score higher than this individual. So that's the answer. It's D. It's not true. Okay, because let's go back. So he scored a -1. We're here. We're looking at percentages. Okay. So it is 50, but it's not 50%. It is like 33, that number right there. So that is not correct. So that's how you use the bell curve to answer those questions. Okay, so they're not trying to make it hard. You're not going to have to go back and figure all those out. You do have to know that if what the bell curve looks like, and you know if it's 1 standard deviation. Okay, does that make sense how you go back and look at it?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things, so what I find with a lot of my students is once you've memorized this, then you really know it. So even to go back and look, you know it because you spent so much time looking at it. Okay. It wasn't that hard, was it?
No.
I'm not trying to make it hard. I'm just trying to tell you that if you could get rid of that thought process, if it's so hard, the way that we learned it definitely was hard, but just definitely not that hard. Okay, and this is the whole thing on the Pearson correlation. I'll just tell you the answer is B. So it's a high correlation. If you want to go back and in this book, I just put it in the chat box. You can look up the Pearson correlation and look at what that means. That's my Pearson R. Okay. Okay, so let's look at number 116. Okay. Mara took a test and scored a 64. The standard error of measurement of the test is 8, with this information, if Mara took the test again, we can accurately infer that her scores would fall between blank and blank about 90% of the time. Okay, so a standard error of measurement is a little bit different than the standard deviation. The standard area of measurement, the way I'm going to figure that out, does anybody know how I figure that one out? I'm going to add 8 to one side and take away 8 from the other. So I'm going to do 64 minus 8 and 64 plus 8. That will tell me where they fall 90% of the time, because I know her standard error of measurement is 8. So what's my answer?
A.
Okay, 64 and 8 is
56 and 72.
okay. You got it. You got it. Go on 18. Counselors must prepare for interpreting test scores to individuals. Which of the following is not true? In general, remember when it talks about an appraisal is just not giving the test. It's also grading or judging the test. So appraisal is not just the instrument you use, but it's the determination or the interpretation that you get based on that score. But which of those is not true? Sorry?
Well, we know that B is true.
Okay.
So C. No, 1 minute.
Okay, so I always suggest that you rule out the 2 that can't be it first. That makes it easier to get some of the ones out of the way. Even if you can rule out 1, just go ahead and rule it out, and that way it kind of just narrows your what you're looking at.
Should receive training.
Let's look A. There's a strong potential for using test results to label and stereotype. Isn't that true?
That's yes.
Yeah. You know, I get a low IQ, I get this. Exactly. B. Counselors should receive training in assessment theory and interpretation. That's true. Especially if I'm interpreting this to a client, I should probably know something about it. Okay. C. Counselors should be careful not to reveal exact test scores to test takers.
That's
Go
not
ahead.
true.
Okay. Why would I want to tell them their exact score?
Why
You're
wouldn't
right.
you?
Exactly. Come on. Yes.
We'd want them to have their score.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We don't want we don't do that. We can keep it from them. It may not be what they want to know, but it's still a fact. We know they're standardized. This is a fact. So that is my answer is C. I've got to reveal them. That's not okay. Okay. Good job there. 119. Testing by computer is quickly becoming the norm for many assessment practices. Which of the following is not an advantage of testing by computer?
We know that A is an advantage. You can get scores immediately.
Got it.
It's computerized and it's efficient and reduces paperwork.
If I know how to use it.
Oh, true.
That's B.
It is B. It is B. Okay. I have to share an anecdote with you. So I do teach college. We are supposed to be cutting edge, like people who just are the best. And if you know about Erickson's theory of generativity versus stagnation, when you work in the college system, many times you have tenure and it's very difficult to be fired. So many of my colleagues teach the exact same way they have taught for years. Exact same way, exact same syllabus. Again, that's just what they do. So I had a colleague this week over the summer. I removed a VCR from my classroom. And this week, my colleague asked me where the VCR was. I'm like, what are you going to do with the VCR? What do you plan on a VCR these days? Like, you know, I had to show her that you could stream most videos from YouTube. So I will tell you that it is great. And mind you, I teach in a college where I have this amazing like touch screen, you know, the full screen that you can touch. It's amazing. You can circle within the video, all of this stuff. And she was upset with me because, you know, the 24-inch TV that went to the VCR, I threw it away.
Oh, wow.
I know. So just so you know, it only works if the people know how to work it.
Right.
No. Okay. Just saying. Okay. So 120. Does anybody know what this one is? And if you don't know what it is, you should know what it's not.
Would it be variance?
Variance is a difference. Remember, variability, variance just means a difference. We talked about the median. Is there a number in the exact middle?
3, 4, 5. Yes.
So.
Oh, okay.
So the 6 is in the exact middle. Would it be C?
It would
Oh,
be
wait.
A.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
Why is it A? So my mode is what?
Your mode is the number most used.
Exactly. And then by just means
2, more than one.
Exactly. So this one has several modes, is it not?
Yes.
So that's what makes it the answer. Okay. So while it may still be the median, bimodal is the most correct answer. So when you see those more than, you know, the number more than once, that's like the key there. Okay. Because remember on my curve, my mode is going to be my highest. Okay. So it may be skewed, but it's still the number that appears the most often. So that's my bimodal. Okay. Oh, come on. Hang in there, guys. You've learned so much, and you can go back and watch the video. And I promise you, it doesn't get harder than this. It doesn't. Okay. 121. Qualitative research is common in social sciences. Which of the following characterizes this type of research? What's the difference between qualitative and quantitative?
Quantitative is number.
Exactly.
Qualitative content, I guess.
Or experience. Okay. So when you call, you go to your doctor, when you call AT&T to complain about your phone, or that's just me, and they say, "Oh, please, at the end of the survey, at the end of the conversation, would you please fill out a one question survey?" That is qualitative. They're asking about the quality of the phone call. Was my questions answered? Was I pleased? Qualitative. Quantitative are my numbers. Okay, so 121.
Okay.
I hear a B. That is correct. It is B. Okay. So the search for causality, determining the variable condition causes an outcome. That is really looking at my quantitative. I'm looking for causality. Okay. So the B, the primary goal of this research is to describe the nature of things. That is what it is. Okay. And the researcher assumes there is a single objective reality which can be measured. Again, those are my quantitative, not qualitative. So it is. Okay. Number 122. Everybody know those terms? Interval, ratio, nominal, ordinal, and nominal? Well, I'll tell you just in case. Or go ahead. You want to share?
I think you said last week, ratio is numbers.
Ratio is a number. You got it.
Intervals. I don't know. Ordinal, nominal. I don't know.
Okay. So interval is time. Ratio are numbers. Ordinal are the order or rank, first, second, and third. And nominal is what? My race, my sex, things like that. That's my nominal.
Wow, I feel so inadequate.
I think it's called learning. So, okay, that's all. That's all. Okay. So then, the level of measurement, which assumes the numbers of the scale represent the same quantities throughout the scale, is the key is quantity. That would be a
Okay, interval is time. So that's not it. Ratio is numbers. Ordinal is order. And nominal is sex, race. So the answer will be B.
answer would be B. That's your ratio. That's exactly what that is.
Okay.
You got it, got it. Okay. 123. Don't freak out. In most research, there is a need to measure and record data of some kind. What the measure we know, the one that we know already, is what?
B.
Ooh, B or D?
One of the
D.
D. That is my dependent variable. Okay.
Yes.
So the way that yeah, he wants a bell. Wait, here we go. There we go. Okay, so the way that I remember it is, let me see if I can turn my camera on, see if you can see me. You see me? Okay.
Yes.
So my independent variable, sometimes my cup of coffee, it's afternoon. My cup of water. This is my dependent variable. It's sitting here. It's a cup of water. It's just sitting here all by itself, and it's going, wow, I taste kind of plain. I'd love for someone to manipulate, do something to me, change me. Can't do anything by itself. Of course, now I can add my powdered drink mix. That's my independent because it changes my dependent. But can my dependent have flavor by itself? Nope. Not unless somebody does something to it. So that's my dependent. Okay. If it's in the morning, I use my coffee. And my coffee's just sitting here. It's all black and hot and it wants some flavor. So my cream and my sugar, my pink stuff, all of that are my independent variables because they change my dependent variable. Okay. So go ahead.
I always get the two mixed up. Always. Hopefully not next Monday, but dependent is the water, right?
Exactly. It can't do anything by itself.
Can't do anything by itself. The independent
anything by itself. Okay, that's the one that can walk around, do whatever. It can add cream if it wants to, it's not, but this one is still going to be my cup of water no matter what, unless somebody else does something to it.
Gotcha.
Okay. Does anybody else have a way that they remember it?
The water is depending on everybody else to change its taste.
Anybody else? Because lots of people do it differently. For me, that's the easiest way to remember. But anybody else want to chime in? So in research efforts, there's a need to measure and record data of some kind. What we measure is known as I'm going to measure by taste what my independent variable did to my dependent variable. Okay.
I often think of like IV, independent variable, as like an IV, and how that impacts you, like getting an IV if you are hydrated. And so
my body is my dependent. I'm sitting here waiting for give me an IV.
Yes.
That makes sense. And my body can't do anything. It can't, it can't hydrate itself.
Yes.
It needs something like give me, I like that. IV is mine. Yes, I like that. Anybody else? Thank you. I like that one. Okay. So let's look at 125.
Proportional and stratified.
Which means?
You're looking at a portion of a population.
And stratified means?
I can't articulate what that means.
Special groups. that special groups. That's exactly what that means. So when I stratify, yes, the correct answer is A, yes. So when I stratify, I'm looking for white males over 50. I'm looking for Asian females 25 to 30. I'm looking for this specific category. So that's when I stratify. Okay. Okay. 28. Last one, guys. The director of a counseling center wants to measure client satisfaction following the completion of counseling. A 5-point scale is designed with a number of statements for each client to complete. On the scale, a 5 is very dissatisfied, 4 satisfied, etc. This is a yes, that's my Likert scale. Likert scale. You got it. Does anybody know the empathy scale? That belongs to Carcut, Carhut, Carcut, Crkhut. What does Carcut do?
I know the scale.
What does it do, Dan? What's the highest?
So the highest is 5, the lowest is 1, and it measures how much empathy you have in response to the client.
You got it. Good job, guys. I got to wrap it up. Questions for me? Anything you've just been dying to know that we didn't cover? So I wanted to give you an overview of what the new testing looks like. Again, I'm sorry the other stuff didn't go away. And all I did was pull that from the website. So this will be here in this recording in this box. It'll be here for 30 days. You will be able to pick it up on YouTube in about 2 weeks, but I try to leave it here just for a few days. For 2 weeks at least. So come back and get to it. If you right click it and save it to your desktop, you'll always have it and you don't have to search for it. Any questions? Any questions at all?
I have a question.
Yes.
The questions that we're going through, whether it's the Rosenthal